One of the most frustrating things about being a Nintendo fan is everything surrounding retro studios. Just the very concept of retro studios, endlessly frustrating. Such a talented studio who has put out such amazing games, especially on a technical level. Scientists are still trying to figure out how they made Metroid Prime on the GameCube. It doesn't make sense. It boggles the mind. And yet we have reason to believe that the studio has had a lot of internal problems. Some might even call it dysfunctional. And after the release of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, the studio went like a game development amount of time. Like, if you consider it takes 4 or 5 years to make a game, they basically went that long, I believe even longer, and didn't have a game to show for it. And it sounds like things behind the scenes have not been well. There have been possibly multiple canceled projects. And of course, now they've been working on Metroid Prime 4 for the last 5 or so years. But before that point, it was just like every single year, just waiting and waiting and waiting, being like, they've got to have something to show for it. What is going to be Retro Studios' next game? What could it possibly be? They can't all have been canceled, right? They can't just have 6 years or whatever under their belts just and accounting for nothing. Literally nothing to show for it. It simply cannot be. Metroid Prime 4 can't be the only thing they're working on, right? And yet, again, year after year after year, it really does just seem like Metroid Prime 4 is the only thing. It seems like that there's just that big gap in the history of retro where they literally just didn't release any games. However, it seems that now we might have a little bit of information about one of these allegedly canceled games. And no, it was not Star Fox Grand Prix or whatever. This information comes from Kiwi Talks, who has previously done a good number of interviews and whatnot with Retro Studios employees and has provided some pretty good information. And it seems over on Resetera, there was a big thread going on. People were referencing an older article about a different canceled game from way back in N64 GameCube days. And there was a whole thing there. And they're all talking about Nintendo Japan's perfectionism and all that stuff. And all these concepts, somebody went and grabbed Kiwi Talks, and this person came over to kind of dip in and give their 2 cents on the situation. And they give thoughts on the conversation overall, but then at the end of their post, give a little, a fresh little tidbit for us. It reads as follows. Also in regards to the project they were working on between Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze and Metroid Prime Remastered, it was some type of music RPG game where the main mechanic was singing. It was a huge disaster, and after years of it going nowhere, Nintendo canceled the project and put Retro on remastering the full Metroid Prime trilogy. This was also to help Retro develop the production pipeline to be able to outsource for assistance in the future. Since all their games were all internally made, you also see a lot of external studios help on Prime 1 Remastered. When everything fell through with Bandai Namco's work on Prime 4, it was given back to Retro. They patched things up with Tanabe after their fallout, and they could only finish a remaster of the first Prime as all resources had to be moved to Prime 4. Unsure what the story is now with Prime 2 and 3 remastered. Okay, so as always, this is a rumor. This is not coming from someone who worked at Nintendo or Retro Studios or whatever. But let's entertain the idea that this is all true. And there's really there's a lot here. First, Nintendo patching things up with Tanabe. I was not aware that there was any kind of beef with Kensuke Tanabe. I didn't really know that was a thing. Did I miss that? Are you all shaking your heads being like, how did you miss that? How do you not know? I really don't know. I'm not sure about that, but that's interesting. I mean, he's been the one who's been leading the last 3 Paper Mario games, so I feel like he's been around the whole time. I don't know, whatever. So then the next most interesting piece of information here, the whole Metroid Prime remastered thing, there have been so many different rumors about this process of getting the Metroid Prime games remastered. And it's funny because we've heard a lot of different things. I wouldn't be surprised if most of those things, if not all of them, have been true at some point. You know what I mean? Because we have had rumors that like these decisions have been changed, and this kind of corroborates that idea that like, yes, at one time there was going to be a full remaster of the entire trilogy, but then it became just Metroid Prime 1, and now no one quite knows for sure what's going to happen to 2 and 3, and that sort of makes sense if they were working on a remaster of Prime 1, but then when development of Prime 4 was given back to them, suddenly they didn't have the resources to work on it anymore, and so there you go. That's why we got a remaster of Prime 1, and 2 and 3 are still MIA. I will say though that, I mean, that even in itself is also very frustrating, very frustrating that they went all those years without making a game, and then they were on the verge of giving us this apparently incredible remaster of the entire trilogy, but then even that got interrupted and diverted. Of course, we're very lucky that we got Prime 1 remastered, I suppose, but yeah, just another, just like, really? Just finish, just finish something. And it is worth noting, if it is true that they were going to give the entire trilogy that same remaster treatment, that's just incredible. Like, just what amazing luck. I still can barely believe we got the remaster that we did. They just did so much work. These games don't sell very well, but they like redoing all of the assets, they didn't even have to. I've said it a million times, but I still believe it. They could have just upscaled the darn games. They still look so good. But so it's just amazing that they were willing to go that extra step. I mean, it really does go to show they really wanted to give Metroid another chance. You know, they greenlit and made Samus Returns, and then there was once a time when Prime 4 was coming, Prime Trilogy Remastered was coming, Dread was coming. Like, they got the Metroid ball rolling again, didn't they? So anyway, so let's move on to the main point here. We really don't have a lot of information about this alleged canceled game from Retro that they were working on between Donkey Kong Country, Tropical Freeze, and I guess Metroid Prime Remastered / Prime 4. But if this is to be believed, some type of music RPG game where the main mechanic was singing. And I guess this was going to be a new IP. It was going to be something completely brand new. I mean, which is obviously really exciting. It's I don't know what this game would have been like. Obviously, there's really, like, tonally, visually, gameplay-wise, we really can't even begin to guess what this might have looked like and played like and been like. But I really do love the idea that it was going to be a brand new IP from Retro Studios. It's just such an exciting concept. And this is frustrating. Like, I cannot just like baselessly speculate here, but Nintendo is funny because they've got a really good eye for quality a lot of the time, but like Nintendo Japan, they're very much micromanagers, you know, like they really want to make sure every little detail is exactly to their wants, their specifications. And sometimes this turns out really great products, but then we hear these stories other times where they upend the tea table or whatever in ways that don't always seem the most wise. Sometimes it really seems like the leaders in Nintendo Japan particularly, they have a very like insular kind of like company culture. They don't always understand what other games from other companies are going for. And so I hate the idea that this game would have been great, but Nintendo, something about it just didn't mesh with Nintendo, and so they meddled, and if the entire thing development was just a disaster, they spent years going nowhere. I mean, the fact that they spent years kind of spinning their wheels does, to a degree, suggest that Nintendo was willing to let them try. You know, like, obviously, they were willing to give them a chance. Plenty of other companies would not have let the company Retro spin their wheels for that long without just being like, nope, game canceled, and you're all fired. We're closing down the studio. Obviously, Nintendo had enough faith in this project to greenlight it and to let it be maybe even the primary... that could be the game. We don't know. There's a chance that multiple projects were started and then canceled between Donkey Kong and Metroid Prime 4. It is possible, but it's equally possible that that was basically it. That was really like the game, the big game that they were working on. We really can't possibly know. And we can't know if it would have been great if Nintendo hadn't meddled and canceled it. It might have actually been a disaster. It could be that they just didn't actually have that good of an idea on their hands. And, you know, sometimes things just don't work out. Sometimes you do have a good idea and you kind of just find that it doesn't really work, you know. I'm sure Nintendo did not take the decision to cancel the game lightly. That's, I mean, you know, that's a big old sunk cost. That's leaving behind, just flushing down the toilet. All of that money, probably just like millions of dollars. And that's really unfortunate, but it is what it is. It really does just point even more to a Retro Studios that has been really, really struggling. And again, like, Nintendo has kept them around. And that's a big deal in this this corporate climate. The fact that they have spent so long not producing anything, have messed up so much, and yet they're still getting a chance. They're getting a big fat chance with Metroid Prime 4. Like they better nail it. That's all I'm saying. They better get it right. But I mean, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what the company culture of Retro Studios is now. Management has shifted around so much. They've hired so many additional people over the years, presumably to work on Metroid Prime 4. They're really talented developers, but like how much of that talent from the old days is even still there? Metroid Prime Remastered really does suggest that they are still very, very good at what they do, but a lot of that was outsourced. I don't really know. Whole situation's kind of a mess, but it is very cool to get a little info on one of the potential canceled projects that will never see the light of day. If they worked on it for years, they gotta have so much. They have to have so many assets made for it. They've gotta have like prototypes somewhere on a hard drive, somewhere at Nintendo. This stuff exists, and boy howdy, I would give anything to see it. That'd be so cool.